101 WABE, Atlanta's NPR station. With Jim Burris, I'm Martha Dalton in for Rose Scott today. Earlier this week, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, decided on a case that affects the civil rights of LGBT adoptive parents. Without hearing oral arguments, the Supreme Court reversed a ruling that denied parental rights to a lesbian adoptive mother who had split with her partner. The case involved two women who were in a relationship for more than 15 years. They had 3 children who were conceived by assisted reproductive technology. One of the women was the biological mother of the 3 children, and the other legally adopted them here in Georgia.
When the parents, who now live in Alabama, split up several years ago, the biological mother denied her former partner access to the children. The Alabama courts claimed Georgia had wrongly agreed to the adoption. The adoptive mother appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and on Monday, the court reversed the Alabama Supreme Court decision. Justices said Alabama misinterpreted Georgia law and violated the principles of the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. In simple terms, states must honor adoptions by same-sex parents who move across state lines. So, what does the ruling actually mean? With us to explain it is family law attorney Ashley Sawyer, and also with us are adoptive parents Jessica and Gina Johnson. Welcome to you all.
Welcome. Hi. Thank you.
Ashley, let's begin with you. What does Monday's ruling do?
Well, it means that same-sex couples who have adopted children in one state can be rest assured that if they move to another state, the adoption is going to be considered valid and the parental rights of those adopted parents are going to stay intact.
So then explain to us, in terms of adoptive same-sex couples, what actually changed Monday? What happened that wasn't the case before?
Well, the Supreme Court basically said that Alabama can't disregard the adoption simply because it disagrees with the way Georgia applied the law. And the only proper attack on a valid judgment of another state is to argue that the trial court who issued that decree lacked the power to do so. So the Supreme Court found that that was not the case in this situation, and that the court did have the proper authority to do that, and in turn said that the Alabama Supreme Court had to abide by the full faith and credit clause and recognize the enforceability of the adoption. That's no different than it actually was before this case, but they just clarified the position.
And just because it was Alabama, that this ruling involved all 50 states.
That's correct.
Because it's the Supreme Court.
Absolutely, yes.
So it applies to all states now.
Right.
Ashley, can you break down the full faith and credit reference here? Explain how this relates, full faith and credit.
Sure. It's a provision in the Constitution providing that full faith and credit be given in each state to the public acts and records and judicial proceedings of every other state. So it essentially commands that a state recognize and give effect to judicial proceedings that are taking place in another state. So states aren't acting as their own sovereign entities and just ignoring the judicial proceedings that are happening in other states.
And Mother Jessica and Gina Johnson, we want to bring you in here. You guys are married. You have 2 children. What effect does this ruling potentially have on your lives? Or could it?
It doesn't actually affect us because we just completed our second parent adoption in Georgia with Ashley recently. We did the one step that seemed to be possibly leading to confusion in the case that was ruled on this week, which was that Gina actually had to relinquish her rights as the birth mother for what was explained to us as a split second, where she gave the rights up so that we could both take them back equally.
Explain that a little bit more. How does that work? Why do you have to give up your rights, Gina?
Well, it was just important to know that because I was the birth parent, that even though we had all the legal chains that we thought were in place, should something happen, there wasn't going to be. Jessica really didn't have any legal responsibility or rights toward the children. So, as explained, just as this happened with the women, like in other situations when people were adopting the children together in a relationship, unless the birth mother relinquished the rights, then when it came down to it, that biological mother was still the parent that was held the rights.
The sole parent?
The sole parent, yes. So even if we were to be married and, you know, all of the things that you think go into having children together in a relationship and your intentions are great, when it comes down to it, should something have happened as the birth parent, they would have been mine. So we had to give them up just for that time to then together have them back.
And then, point of clarification, you all are married or not married at this point?
We're actually not married at this point, and we during our process with Ashley, the Supreme Court did rule that marriage was an option for us, which it was just a matter of us not having gone through. We did as much as we could, and so then about, I don't know, we were 6 months into our course with the adoption of the children before that ruled. So it's not something that we wouldn't do or haven't done, but we've done as much as we could, as you know, as time would allow. So it was just the next step for us.
Ashley, how does this complicate, if it does, the picture?
I think I want to do a point of clarification for them. So, because that was just kind of part of the legal terminology that we were dealing with in the landscape back then. So, family law practitioners kind of created the second parent adoption process. Okay, it's a combination of a third-party adoption and a step-parent adoption. So, you know, before the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex marriage was legal, they had no option, right? So we had to kind of craft this way for them to adopt. So we took a little bit from a step-parent adoption procedure, which there's a consent involved, okay? And then also we took a little bit from the third-party adoption process, which is a surrender. So when Gina did her surrender, she surrendered to herself and to Jessica jointly, okay? And that was one of the bones of contention with the Alabama Supreme Court, all right? They mentioned in there that that is how Georgia misapplied the law because there was no surrender in that second parent adoption. So this kind of came about in about 2004. Family law practitioners were seeing that even though the appellate courts haven't affirmatively made a decision about whether a surrender is necessary or not, there were some dissents and a couple of opinions that were giving us some clues that we needed to change the way we did things. So that's how we came up with this mechanism for same-sex couples, and that's what Gina is talking about. So she didn't surrender them, you know, entirely. It was to herself and to her partner jointly in order to accomplish the adoption and ensure that if we ever had a situation like this couple did in Alabama, that they would not have that issue.
Now, Ashley, do you see things getting a little bit easier for same-sex couples who want to adopt, whether they're married or not, given the SCOTUS ruling, the Supreme Court ruling on same-sex marriage, and also this recent ruling on the adoptive mother in Alabama?
Absolutely. So now, you know, I can have couples come to me who can get married. They are married, and all they have to do is a step-parent adoption. It's easier. There's not a home study involved. It's kind of less paperwork, and it's got more teeth behind it. So, you know, I'm happy that this was the ruling because it means that we're going to have a lot more security for these adoptions going forward.
It sounds like before you were having to kind of, I don't know, dig through a lot of law and a lot of family law and sort of pull out the pieces that applied, which sounds like it's really complicated and tough. Did you guys find that when you were adopting?
It is complicated, and it is important in our position to be educated, and we were lucky enough to get in touch with Ashley, who could educate us, and she explained everything to us and how we wanted to go about it. And, you know, some things may take a little longer or maybe a little more in depth, but in my opinion, the protection and making sure that my kids are legally my kids no matter what happens. If Gina and I, God forbid, something happens and we're not together, or something happens to her, I don't want there to be a split second where my kids are not mine. You know, it's something that straight couples have the right to know. If a straight couple, if a husband is out and is in a car accident and passes away, the kids are not, the mother isn't questioning, well, now I just lost my husband and now what happens with my kids? That's not something that straight couples worry about, but that is something that was on our minds. So now it's not, and it was, you know, every bit of it was great with Ashley and being informed and educated, and I feel 100% confident that no one will ever take my kids away from me. That's what was important to me.
Jessica and Gina, tell us about your kids.
Well, we have two daughters, a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old. One is a sweet old soul, Stella, she's a 9-year-old, and one is a firecracker. So had we had the 4-year-old first, there would not have been a second. And so they're very happy children. The most awesome thing was we were very apprehensive going through this process because even though they're our children, and we're just a very, quote, normal family, by all intents and purposes, our kids, if there was a chance that the judge could have said no, and so that was very real to us because if he had said no, we would have gone right back home to Kennesaw and just gone about our lives. Our children would have never known. There would have been nothing different that would have happened. So this was a pretty heavy year for us. But our children are amazing, and they just know, they have known since they could talk, that they have two moms. And when asked at preschool or by any other, curious person, which this is the South and people are curious, we have found that, the kids just say, I have two moms. And if someone says, where's your dad? And they say, I don't have a dad, I have two moms. And it's just normal. So when you take the weirdness out of it,
Sure.
It just becomes they're normal. So it's hard to say that they're very well-adjusted children, but we are truly just a very well-adjusted family. So it's been awesome to have the solidity behind it that Ashley helped to bring to us, and knowing that, God forbid, it's easy to say, we don't intend on anything ever happening. Well, nobody ever does. But should it happen, we want to make sure that they're as taken care of as we could possibly make sure that they could be. So,
Now, you guys aren't legally married, but you have the same last name. So was that a decision for the family?
We, like Gina was stating earlier, we did everything that we could as we could. And so when we lived in Florida, when Stella was very little, we decided to do the legal name change so that we all have the same name. And then when Payson, our 4-year-old, was born, she obviously was born into the same name. So we've done everything we could. Yes.
Talk about the movement that we've seen, especially over the past year, as it relates to LGBT rights, marriage, just greater acceptance. Maybe 10 years ago when you had your first child, how is it different for you all?
In a big picture way, it is very different. It's a lot more accepted, and like Gina said, we made the decision to move to Georgia, which, a lot of people are like, wait, what are you guys doing? A lesbian couple, why are you choosing to do that? When we lived in Florida where, gay couples walking down the street holding hands is something that no one thinks about there, and so that was a decision for us. So I think in a big picture, it is absolutely changing, and I think it's just another step in the right direction, what happened this week. But as far as for us, as uninteresting as it may sound, nothing has really changed at home. It's not like we are, nothing changes for our family, for our children, and their perception of their family. And it's that core unit is what's very important. And we've been very fortunate that both of our families are as accepting as they could be. They would be out, picketing in the streets, and, they would do all of that to show their support. But we're really just very normal.
And Ashley, as we close out here, is this the final chapter? Is it all said and done, or are there still loose ends that need to be wrapped up?
No, I think, and then we all remember this kind of tug of war that Alabama has been in with the Supreme Court, right? And I'm not sure this is the last we've heard from Alabama. But, at least they admitted kind of defeat last Friday when they said, basically, we're going to succumb to the power of the Supreme Court. Finally, we've been waiting for that. I think it's a great move forward. I'm excited about what this means for everybody. But, we still have progress to make.
Our guests this half hour include family law attorney Ashley Sawyer and adoptive mothers Jessica and Gina Johnson. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'd like to